Well, I traded that Lotus in for a Taiga, and the Taiga was a much better handling car. The Lotus, when I got it, they were only probably, there'd be 7 or 8 that would show up at an event, but they're twitchy. They're short wheelbase. The geometry of the suspension was such that you had to be really careful with it. If you can learn to drive this car, when you get one that really handles well, it'll be a whole lot more competitive.
Real cars, real guys, and real talk. Live from the gearbox at Unique Classic Cars. Welcome to Motorhood. Is sitting in this week, Dan Larson. Dan, first, tell people what you do here at Unique.
I have fun.
You have fun.
I do.
You do.
I've been retired for 25 years. I am about to turn 79, and this is called my side gig. I kind of just do what Jeremy asks me to do. Started out picking up and delivering cars, has escalated to detailing cars in my own shop, and also most of the neon signs that you see here I have hung. So I hang signs and kind of a jack of all trades.
You do it all. Well, yeah. You're one of the guys like me that just likes to hang out here.
Yeah, I just like being here. Yeah, it's fun.
Hanging out with cars. What'd you do for 25 years?
Well, you mean after I retired?
Yeah. Well, no. What did you do before you retired?
Before I retired.
What was your occupation?
I did what Mandy does. I was a financial guy. I was a controller for Cato Engineering.
Yeah.
So I managed money and policies and making sure that we followed the internal audit standards.
There you go.
It was boring. But I had a picture on my office wall of a race car.
Right.
Yeah, mine. And people would come in and say, "You can't race a car like that. You're an accountant." I said, "Yes, I can."
Yes, yeah, without a doubt.
Calculated risks.
When we started this, I was like, we got to talk to car guys. And being around this building for a year now, I know that you are one of the legit car guys.
I am.
You are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, a lot of these guys talk about A to B fast. And I get that. That's a big part of this culture. I am a suspension and handling guy. And after spending some time talking to you, you are as well.
I am as well. Yeah, I've raced sports cars at Brainerd and Elkhart Lake and Blackhawk Farms for 10 years. Enjoyed the daylights out of it. And the only reason I really got out of it was my oldest boy turned 16, and he knew that when he was 17, I could sign a waiver and he could drive the car. And I said, I got a better idea. We're just going to sell the car so your mother and I don't have an argument.
Oh, so you know that when I started here, if you would have walked me into this showroom a year ago, I would have went right over to the Corvettes. Why? Because they look cool, they're fun to drive, and they're fairly affordable. They really are. Yep. Right. I mean, and it's I always use this term, it's kind of a great way for guys that are interested in like dipping their toes in the water to kind of get a taste of what it's like.
That's correct. And I'm a Corvette guy. I've had them since 1972.
What do you got down for Corvettes?
Right now I have an 09 Corvette.
No kidding.
Yep.
Anything, have you done anything to it? I know you. No, really?
Just clean it.
Just clean it?
Yeah.
Keep it pretty?
It's really pretty. It's blue.
The reason I bring that up is I was not originally a Ford Mustang guy, right? I've seen them. I think they look cool. I was not a big fan of the Fox Body. That wasn't my thing. And you were always explaining to me it depends on what your initial impression was.
I had a Fox Body car for a number of years. It was a Mercury Capri that had been reworked by McLaren.
Sure.
And it had there wasn't a single Ford emblem on that car, but there were McLaren emblems on it. They'd even changed the tag on the radiator support to a McLaren car. It was suspension that they'd modified, and they made a convertible out of it, which Mercury never made a convertible.
Right.
And when I used to go to Chanhassen with it, when you come in, they always look at the emblems and they say, all right, our American cars go back over here. European cars go up here by the guest house there.
Sure.
I always got sent over there because I figured it was a European car. Fine. And it was different.
Right.
I've driven some Fox-bodied cars, and again, that McLaren one didn't handle like the standard ones.
Right.
It was much more fun to drive.
Back to the suspension and handling, because after driving cars for a year, and I've driven a lot of them, I love to take them out and just see what they feel like. I today, here I am 1 year later, my favorite car that I have driven that has come through here is the Shelby Mustang GT350. And that car is based on track performance.
Yep.
Right?
And I have driven that car as well because I detailed it in my shop. So.
The one that you hear me talk about that I said I drove 66 miles an hour out on 14 heading east here, you and I both took that out for a spin. That, by the way, was 2016. It had the Whipple.
Had the Whipple Charger.
So that car, I believe, the way it was set up, had well over 900 horsepower.
It was up in those big numbers, yes.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Bigger than you need.
But it was the suspension and handling that really, really impressed me.
Right.
And I was telling you, I was like, I don't know if I could ever find another car in that price range that would be comparable. Then you started telling me about your Boss 302.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about it.
Well, I bought it in 2019. It was a relatively low mileage car, 19,000 miles. Traded in at Unique by a guy from North Dakota who was more anal than I am on keeping things clean. And that's what attracted me to the car. Jay Anderson, who I think you've had on a podcast before, knows me, knows I like handling, told Jeremy, he said, you let Dan take that car for a drive. I guarantee he'll buy it. Well, Jeremy didn't have any trouble letting me take it out for a ride.
Sure.
So I did and wailed on it a little bit, but not crazy. I came back and I bought it. I said, this is not the standard Mustang.
So when you take a car out, because you have literal track experience, right? You raced. We'll get into that in a little bit. But how much of an assessment can you make just taking it out on residential streets and the highway?
Residential streets aren't so good, but I tell you, these roundabouts are a ball.
Really?
Right.
Yeah. So
you can learn a lot in a roundabout.
So is it all like feeling handling. The front end? Yeah,
yes,
right.
Feeling the front end. Does it react? The older Mustangs had a tendency to push, and you'd steer them, and they were just front end heavy, and they kept wanting to go straight. This car isn't that way. Not at all. You turn it, it goes. As a matter of fact, I took it to one track day up at Dakota County where they run a school.
Yeah.
And there was a guy there with a GT350 that was the same color as mine. They assigned the same instructor, which goes with us when we're in the car on the track.
Sure.
To him and I, and we would just follow each other, and he'd go with one of us first, then we'd go back into pits and switch, and then he'd go back out again. The guy with the GT350 said, I don't know how you do it. I can't keep up to you.
Was it the corners?
Corners. And the instructor even made the comment, this thing, when you turn it in, it turns. It doesn't push at all.
What year was that GT350?
2016, I think it was.
So was it in 17 the track package became standard? In 16 it was an upgrade, right?
Could be.
I think.
That I don't know. But the instructor, and this is kind of a funny story too, because I'd had some racing experience, he knew it. So he was just kind of watching me for the first couple of laps. And at the end of the straight that they have up there, where you can reach a speed of about 100 miles an hour, he says, you're turning in too soon. And they had about 100 or 200 degree corner. It was a big, tight corner. He says, you can wait a little longer. And so the next time I waited a little longer, and he said, no, you're not waiting long enough. The next time I come into that corner, he grabbed my steering wheel, and I'm doing 100 miles an hour, and he wouldn't let me turn. Then he let go of it and says, now turn. I was amazed. The car turned. There was no push, and it was the faster way to do it.
So having faith in the car.
Yeah.
Right? And
right.
You hadn't even anticipated that it would be that good.
No.
So when you took that out and you took it for a spin, what immediately impressed you versus the GT350?
One was the exhaust. Got a special quad exhaust system on the Boss 302s.
Doors and then in the back, right?
Doors and the back. They're shipped actually with a plate in the pipe that comes out in front of the rear wheels that has a 5/16 hole in it. So you have just a little bit of it. They said it was designed for the feel of the noise, the sound, the exhaust sound.
Right.
And you would hear that, real deep burble. But the pipe is actually about a 2 1/4 inch pipe, and the plate comes out. Then it really burbles.
No kidding.
And yeah, my plate's in the glove box. But when you take the plate out legally, I guess you're probably not meeting exhaust emission, or not emission, but exhaust noise levels. It really barks.
And when people talk about the Laguna Seca, which was a bit of an upgrade. The one thing, and I understand the purists, but the X-Brace in the back seat versus just having the seat, how much of a difference do you think that makes?
I think it makes a little bit of a difference. It's worth having. It's a lot like if you look in the engine compartment of the Boss 302 or a lot of Mustangs, there's a brace between the shock towers. That's to keep those shock towers from twisting at all. What that X-Brace does is about the same thing in the rear shock towers. It keeps the body flex from affecting the suspension.
So when you say it's worth it and makes a small change, if you're going to be running on the track, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You won't feel it driving on the street.
So just driving on it, just for everyday use, you wouldn't feel it.
Not really.
So
I don't think so. Now a technician might tell me I'm wrong, but
I have to ask you to compare the two. Your Boss versus that 2016 GT350 we had with the Whipple and the track package. Compare them.
I'd rather keep my Boss.
Why? Is it that good?
It's the balance.
Yeah.
The car is, you feel like you're dancing when you're going through curves. And that's what I liked about the Formula Ford that I raced. That was a dance maneuver. You just balance between front and rear. You didn't have a huge response on throttles. The Whipple gives you a whole lot more, but it can also get you into trouble.
Right.
Coming out of a corner, you give it a little too much, you're going to wind up seeing where you came from.
Right.
The Boss is better balanced with that 444 horse and that's enough. You don't need, in my opinion, 700 or 800 horsepower.
Well, that standard GT350, even without the Whipple, is over 540, right?
Right.
And you'll hear that a lot from guys. Unless all you're doing is racing, anytime you go over 500, it's just A to B stuff.
Right, and you can't, with today's tires, even the speed-rated tires that I buy for the cars, they're not made for much over. They're not going to handle more than about 500.
What do you got on there for tires for your Boss?
The Boss, I just bought a set of Nittos.
No kidding.
And I've got them on. I have a Camaro as well, because I'm a Chevy guy.
Right.
That has a lot of suspension upgrades, and it kind of handles a little bit like the Boss, but there are some differences. And I've got the P0s on that, or the Nitto Zeros on that.
Do you have 10-inch tires on the back?
The Boss is 9.5. The Camaro, I think, has 10s.
10s, gotcha. So you would take the Boss over the Shelby GT350?
I would.
And that's strictly based on suspension and handling?
Suspension and the way the car is balanced, and I love that exhaust.
You have me intrigued. I really do want to get in one now and drive it, because we had a Porsche 911 in here last fall. I took that out, and I was pretty impressed with it, right? And, I mean, that's obviously, they are what they are. But I told everybody, because that 350 was still sitting at the end of the aisle, I'm like, you go drive that car and you tell me that Porsche is better. To me, it wasn't. To me, it wasn't. I mean, it was like that GT350, that's my car right now, but after listening to you and talking about the Boss 302, I'm intrigued and I want to give it a shot.
We'll see if we can work that out.
We'll see if we can work that out sometime. I want to talk to you briefly, because suspension and handling is obviously a big part of racing.
Yeah.
And when did you start racing?
I started autocrossing back in about 1970. I got married in 69. I think I got my wife into it right away. We're going to get a car and do some autocrossing. But that particular car was a Myers-Minx dune buggy with a 140 horse Corvair in it instead of the Volkswagen motor. And I had a lot of fun for about 2 years with that car, going around various parking lots and a few race courses. But the clincher was, I took it to Brainerd for one event. And at the Brainerd track, it's a 3-mile track. There's a 1 mile long straight. And all they did on that track was, on that 1 mile long straight, halfway down, they put a chicane on the right side and said, you got to go through that, go over to the left side. Other than that, it was the whole track. One session on that track, and I came in and told my wife, we're buying a car where I can do this more.
And then what did you get?
I bought a Formula Ford.
and your racing career kind of began right there.
Started right then.
Then. When did you wind up with the Lotus?
I bought the Lotus and I would have probably been about 76, 77. Yeah.
So making your way around the circuit, what kind of how does that work? For the average guy, if you, like you, right. You know what? I would like to get on the track and compete. Not in the wheelhouse right now, but I would love to do that. Yeah. You get to spend a good chunk of your life doing it.
I did. You join SCCA with that membership. Then you once you buy a car, you have to go through a driving school with them. You have to have a physical every year. So the doctor deems you capable of. You don't have a heart issue or anything else that'll be a safety hazard. And then you just have to go to. You need to get at least 2 races in a year to keep your license current. I think that's what the number was 2. And I would do maybe 4 or 5 a year. And then you had a choice of tracks to go to. All on your own, no sponsorship. Have to have a little bit of money so you can pay for a few things that break.
Sure.
And just started driving. And by the time I was probably 4 or 5 years into it, I was able to get a national license, and then I was an instructor at SCCA schools with guys who were coming in. So you're taught by people who race the same kind of car you do.
How important is that for guys who have never been through it?
Well, I know some guys who went through it and quit.
Really?
It scared them.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
Why is that?
I think the speed might have had something to do with it.
Really?
Driving a car fast on the street is not quite the same as driving it wheel to wheel with another guy next to you.
Right.
At 125 to 130 miles an hour.
Right.
Going into corners with somebody next to you.
What was your favorite race car that you drove?
Well, I traded that Lotus in for a Taiga, and the Taiga was a much better handling car. The Lotus, when I got it, they were only probably, there'd be 7 or 8 that would show up at an event, and they were relatively inexpensive. I think I paid $3,000 for a running car. But they're twitchy. They're short wheelbase. The geometry of the suspension was such that you had to be really careful with it. And people told me, they said, if you can learn to drive this car and keep it on the track, you'll be able to, when you get one that really handles well, you'll tell the difference and you'll be able to a whole lot more competitive.
What kind of a car really handles well, then?
Well, the Taiga did.
The Taiga.
When I got it. But again, now that was, I bought it, was probably 6 years old at the time, and it was $5,000 for a chassis without a motor. So I took the motor out of the Lotus and put it in there. Within a couple of years, they started coming up with the inboard suspension cars where the shock absorbers are in the chassis rather than out in the airflow. Helped tremendously in aerodynamics. And those chassis were $25,000 without an engine. That was something I wasn't willing to gamble with.
Right.
So I never upgraded to that. That was another reason I kind of got out of it later. But what they did, SCCA created a class then for the older cars, calling them kind of like vintage or and I was in that class. Then I was able to win because with an older outboard suspension car, I did win a race at Black Hawk Farms, which was neat.
Sure.
Neat. What was fun, though, is the qualifying for these races are held usually on a Saturday and the races on a Sunday. When we qualified, the track was wet and it was raining, slight mist. I, of course, had rain tires, and I put those on and went out. That whole session while I was qualifying, I came in and I told my wife, I said, I think I did fairly well because nobody passed me. And she said, well, good. I come out, I'd gotten the pole in that class. The race was on dry tires, dry track, and I managed to keep my position.
Just grabbed the whole shot and you never looked back.
Never looked back, no. But I've done some ice racing too in the wintertime with a dune buggy I had with studded tires. And I'm used to letting things slide. It doesn't bother me to do that. So
right.
Being on the rain and letting it slip a little bit didn't scare me.
Sure.
So I probably pushed harder than the other people did.
Your race cars aside, have you had any of your other cars out on a track?
The Boss.
The Boss, the 302.
Yeah.
You actually took it out. And
One time
I
did, yeah.
And tell people a little bit about that.
Well, I mentioned earlier the story with the instructor grabbing my steering wheel. But when I raced the SCCA races, they would be a 2-day event. Friday would have probably 2 sessions of practice and a qualifying session of 35 minutes. And then Sunday there would be a warm-up in the morning for 20 minutes and a race for 35. So 4 times on the track over 2 days. I could handle it. I was between 30 and 40 years old at that time. I told you earlier I'm going to turn 79. I was 78 when I was up with mine at the Dakota County track. That was 15 to 20-minute sessions, 7 of them in one day.
Wow.
I got to the 6th session, and I was shot.
Yeah, people don't understand. It's the
taxing.
stress, right?
Yeah.
It is. It's emotionally taxing.
Right. They talk about the NASCAR drivers, the Formula One drivers who do all these exercise programs. There's a reason.
It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. It really is. And so I came for the 7th session, and they come around and they said, "Are you going out?" And I said, "Nope, I'm going home." I said, "I'm tired." And there were about 52 cars that had entered that event that day I was there. I think there weren't but 30 of them left anyway, because
Really?
even the younger guys said, "Well, I've had enough," and they were going away. So I don't feel too bad about it.
Sure. I have to ask, are you still familiar with how the circuit is running stuff? Because if there's guys out there that want to get involved and they want to pick it up as a hobby like you did, what would be your best advice for them?
I'd join SCCA. That's a sanctioning body that's nationwide. They put on good races. They're safe. They have corner workers that know what they're doing, a lot of volunteers, but they and believe me, the corner workers can help you with the flagging and stuff. And I'd say just get into SCCA if you want to do road racing.
Right.
There are some smaller groups that are more inclined to maybe one track, but I would do the SCCA because within this Mankato area, Brainerd is about 3 hours away. Elkhart Lake is maybe 5 hours away. Blackhawk Farms is about 5 hours. They're within easy driving distance.
And you'd probably find them all over the country, right?
There are, yeah. I've been to Mossport Park. I volunteered before I got into racing on crew members for people that I'd met that were racing, so I got familiar with what you do and why you do it. And I've been to Mossport Park, I've been out to Illinois. There are places if you want to travel. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, when you were younger, what sparked your interest in cars? What I mean, every kid at some point is drawn to something.
It started when I was 16. And first license that I got a license at 16. Acquired a 55 Chevy Bel Air, 2-door post, beautiful car. 6 years old at that time, and I was amazed I could afford it. But then I had a small incident with a fence post in the wintertime with it and dented a fender. Of course, my dad was a little bit on the frugal side.
Sure.
And he said, "Well, if you broke it, you fix it. We're not trying to get into the insurance company." All right, fine. I found a guy that had a shop that let me work with him, and we went through that car, and I had just a dented fender.
Right.
Oldsmobile headlights, Buick taillights, nosed and decked it, took all the emblems off, took the bumper guards from a station wagon and put them on the front, which were lower and had lights in them, and wired those in so the lights worked.
Sure. Brought
the car home, and my dad just blew a cork. He said, "You ruined that car. Where's the hubcaps? No, I didn't, Dad. I fixed it." Well, my brother, who was only a year and a half younger than me, by that time he was 16, and he got a license, and my dad says, "Make a key for him. He's driving the car too." I said, "But," he said, "Hey, if you don't like it, go buy another one."
Right.
I did.
So that was your first experience actually getting your hands on.
Yeah.
Did that give you the bug? Did that get you the itch?
Because I loved having something different than everybody else.
Right.
I didn't want to have what everybody else had.
Where did you go from there after that car?
I bought a 57 Ford pickup truck from California. It had a Mercury 312 in it and a straight stick, and it had been hit in the front end here, and the guy just left it. Bought it in a junkyard for $200. Jack Johnson in Eagle Lake had it, but he had a 59 Ford front end in the box. Well, I drove it home that way. My mother cried. She said, "You can't park that in front of our house." We had a house with a single stall garage. There was no place to hide anything, so it sat outside.
How did all of this evolve into your love for suspension and handling and then obviously racing?
Well, buying the first Corvette that I did in 72. And finding out, and actually there's a funny story behind that one too. My brother-in-law had a Corvette, a 66 coupe, and he was in the National Guard. He had to go away for 2 weeks. He didn't want the car to sit, so he said, "Dan, I'd like you to just take the car to your house and just drive it for 2 weeks." That was it. I said, "I got to have one of these."
So that was your first experience with that kind of suspension and handling.
And I said, this is really fun. So then I bought my own, did some work to it because it needed a little bit. And then I autocrossed that once or twice. I actually took it to the Spearfish. Spearfish, South Dakota has a Corvette rally. I think they still do. But this was back in 88, 89. Took it there, and I got a trophy for the 500 cars in the car show on Main Street, got a trophy. I think it was second place or third place for the show in that class. Then I autocrossed it and got a trophy. I think it was third place autocrossing the car.
Where do you keep all your trophies? Are they out in your...
No, I gave them away.
You did?
I did, yeah.
Get out of here.
No.
Why?
Too many. I'm not bragging.
Is that a flex?
Is that a flex? They got in the way. On the top of my refrigerator in the basement, I think I have kept 5. The first autocross trophy I ever got, which was in '74.
Yeah.
I won for the studded tire thing. Just a little variety of some of the first ones I got, and that's it.
What I thought you'd have them displayed in, do you call it the Templeton Lounge?
Yes, it's the Templeton Lounge. I guess you've talked about that.
Oh, well, I've mentioned it.
You haven't been there yet, have you?
I've never seen the inside of the Templeton Lounge.
That could be arranged, too.
I may have to, see if I can make a reservation sometime.
Yeah. Well, sometime when the Rat Pack gets together and goes out, we should invite you along.
Yeah. Well, I can't even make the coffee club here on Saturday mornings right now. That's like invite only. So I'm still working on getting my way in.
No, you're talking about the misfits that meet here. That's not invitation. You just got to be a little bit weird.
Well, Dan, I'm gonna have to have you back on here because there's a lot we can talk about. We share interests, I think, in a lot of the same vehicles, and I know that you have a ton more experience, and you're a wealth of knowledge here in the building. So whenever I have questions, I know that I can ask you.
You feel free.
I love it. I love it. All right, a quick reminder, by the way, our proxy bid auction is going online right now. Here at Unique, and you can shop online in the comfort of your own home, and we will do that, I believe, once a month, and I think that wraps up on Monday. Jeremy wanted me to give a quick plug because you can get some steals on there, seriously. So he's, by the way, snowmobiling right now, and he has a bad back. I grew up on the Canadian border in northern Minnesota. I know all about sleds.
Yeah. He had to go north to find enough snow for that.
He
quite
did.
a ways.
He did. By the way, we're going to have 50s and sunshine, it looks like, next week.
Yeah.
These roads are going to dry up, and people are going to get the itch to get out and about.
Not yet. There's too much salt residue.
Too much salt, I know, but I've got the itch. It's just a matter of the roads cooperating and Mother Nature. But I always end the podcast with this, and this was advice that my father gave me when I was younger, and I got into motocross, right? And I was on a CR80R in the middle 80s, and I was in the ditches up and over, and I came up short once, and that hurt. I mean, it hurt. And I remember him telling me this. He said, whenever you're on an approach like that and you're in doubt, gas it. So when in doubt, gas it.